Hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Pau. I'm a mom of two. I have a beautiful daughter and a beautiful son. This video is to share my story of my emergency C-section with my son. I made a different video about my natural unmedicated birth with my daughter. So it's going to be quite the contrast here. I don't really know where to begin with the story because life was so chaotic with my son. My husband in my second trimester had accepted a job in Colorado, and my husband wasn't working at that time, by the way, so it was great that he had a job. It was just bittersweet that it was in Colorado. So anyway, you know, with all of that happening, we had planned for me to stay with my mother-in-law because he would essentially have to relocate first. So he ended up relocating in May. For that month, I stayed with my mother-in-law. My daughter and I stayed with her, and I was working, and then he came to visit at the end of that month. The morning that I was supposed to take him to the airport, my water ended up breaking within the hour before he was supposed to go. My mother-in-law ended up taking him to the airport. I called my parents, who thankfully were still in the area. I called my sister, but she was already heading to our place, which was 45 minutes away. So then my parents came and picked my daughter and I up. On that 45-minute drive, I wasn't feeling very many contractions. They were definitely very tolerable. When we got to the house, my hospital from our house is about 15 minutes away. So within all of that time frame, I was still feeling fairly fine. My sister ended up taking me to the hospital so that my parents could watch my daughter. We got to the hospital, and I was wearing an adult diaper at that time just because I was leaking so much. That diaper was completely drenched. They were like, yeah, we're pretty positive that your water broke. You'll have to stay and we'll monitor you. There were also concerns in my earlier prenatal visits that baby potentially could be breached. So I had a bedside ultrasound completed, and they were like, oh, no, baby looks like he turned correctly, head down. So you should be all good to go. They're actually going to give me some Pitocin, which I declined because I really wanted my body to just naturally do its thing, on its own time. I did say, if things took too long, then we can consider it, but let's just see how things go. And thankfully, I opted against it because within the next hour, when I got there, my contractions were about 10 minutes apart. In the next hour, they ramped up to about 2 to 3 minutes and then got down even more. And I remember laying in my bed in my room, them monitoring just everything that was going on. And then the nurse coming in, and she wanted me to adjust a couple times. So she had me lay on my right side. She came back a few minutes later, had me adjust and go on my left side. I didn't really question anything until she came back in and she asked me to go on all fours. At this point, I'm just asking her if everything's okay. She is a little concerned because she was noticing that with my contractions, baby's heartbeat or his heart rate kept dropping. She did a cervical exam to just check how dilated it was, and that's when she looked at me and she was really concerned. She said, so baby's umbilical cord is coming out first, and we can't have that. This is unfortunately going to have to be an emergency C-section situation. So here I am with my sister, who has never had to deal with anything like this. She is unsure what to do. At this point, I'm consenting to it because for the safety of my baby, I'm not going to decline that, right? And my sister is calling my husband, just informing him. I think he was at the hospital, he was at the airport at this time, so she was still able to get in touch with him. We updated my parents and his mom just to make sure that everyone kind of knew what the situation was. There were concerns too that my labor was going too fast because my doctor wasn't even there at that point. She was still on her way. Thankfully, she made it in time to hear the news that this would be an emergency C-section. So she just prepped me on everything, gave me kind of the high-level details about how long it would take. And she said it was like 20 minutes or so that they would have me all completed and done and whatnot. There was just a lot. She was telling me, you know, in the next 5 minutes, you're going to see a lot of people. And she was not kidding. I mean, after I signed my consent forms, I had so many nurses coming in as I was being wheeled to the OR. I had more and more faces just like hovering above me. Oh, I should say I get an injection in my thigh, by the way, to stop the contractions or to like, I think, slow them down. I don't remember what it was, but I essentially get an injection to stop the contractions. But I also had to have a nurse, and this is going to be very descriptive and TMI, but I also had a nurse essentially insert her fingers in me and then spread them open to like stop the contractions from compressing on baby's umbilical cord. And that was the worst part of it. She essentially had to be face to face with me for like 5-10 minutes, having to just, while everyone was preparing everything, having to just, we were BFFs at that point. We were just face to face, her fingers in me. Like, it's painful. It is so painful. And generally I don't use that word when it comes to like the labor and delivery process, but this definitely made me, like, I think I was heaving a little bit. Once everyone was kind of in the know of what needed to be done, we were both wheeled to the OR, and then we both had to move onto the operating bed. So I shimmied myself. She ended up also moving into the bed. I got I got a mask with anesthesia, so I ended up getting knocked out in like 3 seconds. I mean, at that point, I could not get a spinal just because I was too far along. So I was knocked out for the surgery. I woke up and I remember being a little bit hazy and like foggy. Things were just a little bit unclear to me, but I remember first seeing a clock in front of me and trying to guess how much time had passed. And it looked like it was about an hour that had passed. I remember asking the nurses where my baby was. They were like, well, do you remember if you have a boy or a girl? I think they were really trying to check to make sure I was like not out of it still. So I said, oh, I have a baby boy. And then we were just making small talk. They were asking me how I was feeling, and I had so much pain medication that I really didn't feel anything. I was numb from, the waist down, from like my abdomen down. They wheeled me back to my room, and when the doors opened, I saw my sister holding my baby. She was FaceTiming my husband. So let's see, he was already home. He had made it to our house in Colorado. Holding my baby for the first time after a C-section was such a different experience from holding my daughter, because with my son, I was so tired. Although I had felt like I slept for days once I woke up, when I got to the room, I just felt immediately tired again. And so I nursed my son, I held him, but I did not hold him for as long as I held my daughter. With my daughter, I did skin to skin for, I felt like hours. With my son, I was so tired that I needed to go to sleep. I just felt like I needed to go to sleep. So after I nursed my son and my sister was holding him, I tried to conjure up some strength to just walk around. The pain medication was enough to not make me feel anything, so walking around was tolerable and bearable. I had compression wraps around my leg to just make sure if I wasn't walking that my legs were still, they wouldn't swell up. And I had a ton of swelling even while using the compression wraps. And then I had a catheter attached to me. I mean, it was just so different from when I had my daughter, because with my daughter, I was up and about. I went home and I was up and about. I was alone majority of the time at the hospital. I did have a moment when, after using the bathroom, I came back and I just felt so cold. I actually started shivering like uncontrollably, and thankfully it was close enough to press the nurse button, or the nurse call button, that someone came in and I was shaking so much that they couldn't even take my temperature. So what the nurse did was she essentially took 4 or 5 blankets, warmed them all up, and I wrapped myself in 4 to 5 blankets for like the next hour and a half. I was so cold. I don't think that was attributed to the C-section. That could be because I was nursing, and she thinks that because I was nursing, my body is just dealing with all the temperature changes. So that was kind of a scare moment, especially not having anyone at the hospital with me. Once I got home though, I tried my best to be strong, but I was too stubborn to take any pain medication, so really was bedridden. And not even bedridden, I was couch ridden because I refused to go up our stairs to go sleep at night on our bed, even though that was more comfortable. I could not fathom having to get up every single night. And so for like 3 weeks, I ended up sleeping on our couch with pillows propped behind me. I was at about a 90-degree angle every night for like 3 weeks, with my son sleeping in a little bassinet next to me, my daughter sleeping with my sister. I eventually tried to muster up some courage to go sleep in my bed. And so after about 3 weeks, I decided to go sleep on our bed, flat on my back, and it was gruesome trying to get up. And then I was just on edge all the time because my daughter wanted to co-sleep, and I was just so worried she was going to, like, in her sleep, kick me in my incision area. It was just terrible. I did not get a good night's sleep. It wasn't until maybe 6 weeks in that I felt a little bit better. Now it's been about 4 months, and the healing is, I think, I would say I'm pretty much back to normal, besides sometimes the incision having a bit of itching and dryness to it. But the scar, the scar's healed. I got staples and they kind of just went away. So I would say, the recovery took months longer compared to when I had my natural unmedicated birth with my daughter. Counting this, I'm reminded of how strong I am in both cases, but I think that C-section moms don't get enough recognition. So I'm hoping that this video shines a light onto that. But in the end, I'm just really grateful to have my baby with me, that he was healthy, that I was healthy and able to recover. Thank you so much for listening to me share my experience to the end here. It has been quite a whirlwind these last 4 months, having gone through the healing process of my C-section, having to move to a whole nother state, going back to work, putting my kids in daycare. It's just been chaos, but I'm in a new norm. I'm in a much better place, and I'm looking forward to creating more videos, to sharing more of my experiences, and really just hopefully help out another mom out there, relate to her. With that said, thank you so much for spending time with me. Feel free to check out all my other videos, and again, like and subscribe to see future videos.